Hello everyone, this is guitarist Hristo Vitchev, and I'm truly excited to be able to share this new video series on 2-5-1 progressions and all the different ways that we can voice them on the guitar. I will be showing you some of my all-time favorite voicings for all different types of chords, and hopefully throughout the series you will be able to gain some new perspective and a new viewpoint on harmony and expand your own chordal and harmonic palette. So thank you so much for watching, and without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, so we are ready to start. We're going to start with example number 1. To keep things more organized for the entire video series, I will be showing all the examples in the key of C major. So the three chords will be D minor 7, G7 and C major 7. Of course, we're going to be adding a lot of color to the chords, a lot of extensions and alterations, which we would address as we go through. And also I will start breaking things into positions. We're going to start with the very first position and see what are some of the voicing options that we can use there, and move from there all throughout the fretboard to achieve all the different 251 voicings. I'm also going to break the voicings into different categories. Some of them are going to be 4-note voicings, others are going to be 5-note voicings. We're going to have 3-note voicing options. We're going to have chordal, quinto structures, drop 2 type voicings, close intervals and so forth. So it's going to be a very varied set of voicings, and of course some of them are going to require some stretching, others are going to be much more easy on the left hand, but we're going to address those as we go. So I'm going to pick a highest note. This is the first possible note on our fretboard, first string, first fret, the note F, which will become the flat 3 of my D minor chord. The D minor 7th chord is spelled D, F, A, and C. This happens to be the flat 3rd. Here's my favorite way to voice a D minor if F is the highest note. I'm gonna do this. Now going over the chord, I have F on the 4th string, which is the flat 3rd of the chord. Then we go to C is the flat 7. Then I'm gonna add the note E, which is the 9th, and then back to another flat 3rd or F. So the full chord, F, C, E, and another F. So that's my favorite way to voice a D minor in this position. When this D minor resolves to a G7, some of the motions I like to use, I'm actually going to move these two fingers, the C and the E, to B and E flat, which in the G7 harmony are going to become the 3rd and the sharp 5 or flat 13. The Fs are going to stay here, which become the flat 7s in the harmony. So now we have this. This is your G7 sound. So here's D minor. That's a G7. Now on the dominant 7 chords, I'm a true fan of using as much color as possible, and I usually like to play more than one voicing per harmony. Just to give you some of the harmonic options and melodic options that we can add on those chords. So I'm going to voice one more chord in this position, which is going to change the highest note. I'm going to move to G and use this voicing. Now this is a G7 flat 9. I have A flat on the 4th string, B on the 3rd, D on the 2nd, and G on the 1st. Respectfully, this is the flat 9 of G, the 3rd of G, the 5th of G, and the root. So this is your G7 flat 9. And I usually like to combine those two. Right. And now we're going to resolve to a C major. My favorite way to play a C major, if I approach it with these two G7s, it's to play this. Now I'm using some open strings, so if you're transposing a different case, your first finger would end up on fret number 0, or the imaginary fret, as I call it. Now we have an F sharp, A, B, and E. And of course I'm just putting my finger here so you can see how the shape looks if you transpose it anywhere else on the fretboard, but for now we can just play it like this. So I have F sharp is a sharp 11 or flat 5 of C, A is the 6th or 13th, B is the 7th, and E is the 3rd. So this is the C major 7 with the 13th and the sharp 11. So if I combine all these voicings together, here's our 2-5-1. as you're playing this, of course, you can experiment with moving the different Gs. Maybe I can go through this D minor, then play the G7 flat 9, then go to the sharp 5 or flat 13, and then resolve to the C. Or you can try the way we showed it initially. D minor, G7 sharp 5 flat 13, G7 flat 9, and resolve to the C major 7 sharp 11. So again, this is one way that I like to voice in this. If my hand happened to be in this position and I encountered the 2-5-1 in C, this is some of the sounds that to me bring the guitar closer to a piano-like sound. So here's option number 2 for the same position. There's another way I like to voice a D minor chord that has the flat 3 on top, in this case F. I'm going to do this new voicing. So now in this case, what I changed from the initial D minor that we had, it's simply I moved the F up to a G and I moved the E down to a D. So now we end up with this voicing, which is a D minor 11. G is the 11th or 4th of D, C is the flat 7, D is the root, F is the flat 3. So that's another cool voicing to kind of combine with the first one we had. If I end up playing this one, usually the voice leading I prefer the best in this position, it's to move the G to an A flat and leave all the other notes the same, which spells a G7 suspended flat 9 chord. You might also have seen that chord written as a D half diminished over G. It's a suspended version of an outer dominant 7 chord. And so now I have the A flat, the C, the D, and the F, which is the flat 9, the 11th or suspension of the G, the D is the 5th, and F is the flat 7. And when I resolve this chord, I'm going to use exactly the same voicing for G7 flat 9 we had in the previous 2-5-1 version, which is A flat, B, D, and G, or flat 9, 3rd, 5th, and root. So I have the suspension, resolution, and now I'm going to resolve to a different C major because the voice leading in this position works slightly better. If I move the A flat and the B a half step higher to A and C, and leaving the D and the G intact, I get this, which becomes a C major with the 13th and the 9th, or C major 6-9. A is the 6th or 13th of C, C is the root, D is the 9th, G is the 5th. Some of you, if you like stretching, you might put the root with the pinky on the 8th fret and get the full voicing. I'm playing C on the 6th string, A on the 4th, C on the 3rd, D on the 2nd, G on the 1st. So here's the second version of the 2-5-1 progression. We can start with this voicing, move to the suspension, then move to the flat 9 resolution, and then to this C major. If I play it in time, now once you have that, we can combine those two progressions. If they're relatively in the same area and share some of the same highest notes, it'll be very easy to make them more refined by maybe choosing the first D minor, resolving to the second one, then maybe choosing the first G7, going to the suspension, then going to the flat 9, then resolving to this C major, and then to this. So now we can have a much more dense harmonic rhythm. If you have 2-5-1 progressions that take 4 measures or more, you obviously want to play more than one voicing per bar. Or even if they're into a 2-measure phrase, but it's a slower tempo, you can definitely try to do that as well to have a more dense sound. So again, once we have all the options, let me go one more time through those two that we covered. Option number 1 is going to be this D minor, moving to G7 sharp 5, G7 flat 9, and then C major sharp 11, 13. Option number 2 had this D minor. Then we're going to move into the suspended G7. Then we're going to move into a G7 flat 9, which is the same G7 we used in the previous progression. But this time resolve to a C that sits slightly higher on the fretboard. So again, if I combine both of those, you can create quite a different array of sounds. Now, going to option number 3, for those of you who don't particularly like stretching or it's still too difficult, if you haven't worked on some of the stretching exercises, which I'll be showing later in the series, there's other options. We can use slightly different intervals to accomplish the same thing. So let me show you some of my favorite ways to still stay in this position and voice that 2-5-1 that we've been voicing so far. So I'm going to actually select a drop 2 voicing for the D. This is something we can do very easily. It's a voicing that doesn't require any stretching. I have an open D, A, C and F. So that's root, 5th, flat 7 and a flat 3. And then to go to a G7, I'm going to pick this G7. Now this G7 is spelled F, A flat, open B and G. I would actually put my finger, I like to voice it like this, putting my finger over the open string, just so I can have the same grip that I would be using if I move keys. So this is the G7, F, A flat, B and G. And I'm going to resolve to a basic C major 7 drop 2. In this position, this is a C major 7 in first inversion, starting on the E, going to B, C and G. E, B, C, G. So again, that's the 3rd, the 7th, root and 5th of the C major. So again, you still have the same highest note as the first voicings we covered, but it's a much more compact fingering to get you there. And if you want to have 2 different G7s, we can definitely utilize this G7, which is not a bad stretch at all, in combination with this, to get me a slightly more dense harmony on the 5 chord. So now this is version number 3 of that 2-5. Thank you so much for watching the first episode of the 251 ways to voice a 2-5-1 progression. I just wanted to summarize the 3 different voicings that we covered in today's video lesson. The very first one we had was this, D minor, moving to a G7 sharp 5, G7 flat 9 and C major 13 sharp 11. The second one was D minor 11, moving to a G suspended flat 9, G7 flat 9 and C major 6-9. And the third one was a more compact way of voicing it, using drop 2 voicings, D minor 7 followed by a G7 flat 9, G7 sharp 5 and C major drop 2. So now I would encourage you to study those 3 and see how you can combine them. Again, combining all the different 2 chords from the 3 progressions, then all the different 5 chords and all the different 1 chords to create a more extensive 2-5-1 variation. Maybe something like this. I can start with this D, then move to... If you notice, since the first D had the F on top already, and all the other voicings for D minor also have F on top, in a true musical statement, I don't want to repeat that note all the time. So maybe if I play this as a first voicing, then I can just play the differences as a contrast to the first voicing. See what I'm playing? So I'm playing just F, C and E without the F, which completes the voicing. And then I'm contrasting that with G, C and E without F, which completes the original voicing. So I can have a line that in D minor that sounds like this. Again, that's utilizing all 3 voicings in a much more creative fashion. I can do the same with all the G7s. So I can take my first G7, go to the second G7, and then use the third G7, and then also the last one we had here. And I can also subtract some of the things that repeat, some of the notes that are the same. So in the first one, when I play the F, compared to the suspended version, instead of playing the F, I can just jump to this as a contrast, the A flat, C and D, which is the leftover if the F is taken. So I can play a line like this. By the same token, when I go to this voicing, this is the voicing for flat 9 that came from the first progression. It has the A flat, the B, the D, and the G for G7 flat 9. The last voicing we use in progression number 3 also had the same highest note. So if I end up playing this voicing and want to contrast it with this G7 flat 9, I can only play the part that's left over without the G, which is the A flat, B, and D. And so then you can have much more varied textures and ways of using harmony in a much more melodic fashion in this. So once again, thank you so much for watching this first installment. I look forward to seeing you very soon with the next 3 options for 251, and slowly but surely we would go through all 251 ways to voice this progression. Thank you so much and see you next time.